Hello, I'm Jim. I'm in a band called Hot Milk, and this is my studio. We literally got off the plane like a couple of days earlier, so straight into Slam Dunk. We were on site like super early, but the shows were really good. Like, we were absolutely knackered, but the crowds turned up and gave us energy. So yeah, it was a nice way to kind of end a 7-week tour. With the upcoming album, Corporation P.O.P, we did the majority of it in LA actually. So we worked with Zach Jones and KJ, and they've got the studio out there. And one of the big reasons for that was we wanted to do everything analog. And, you know, given the size of this room, can't do drums in here. You can't, you know, I can't stock a load of amps and cabs and stuff like that. So, you know, we met up with them, and they kind of specialize in that, and they're really wanting to kind of push the envelope of moving back away from completely digital in the box albums and more kind of focus on getting these unique and like personal and, I don't know, more thought out sounds, something that's not like a preset or a sample that, you know, multiple bands are using, kind of have each sound have its own signature. So we were really interested in getting into that world. So yeah, the majority of the instrumentation was done out there, using a whole variety of like amps, cabs, synths, drum machines, trying to experiment more with like tangible things that you can, you know, fiddle with switches and knobs and whatever, rather than just flicking through presets. And that was part one. So we did pretty much all the kind of instrumentation out there. And then we came back here and split our time between here and Treehouse in Chesterfield, with Jim Pinder, who has been tracking drums for us for, you know, since the band started. So, you know, we did all the drums there, the live drums, and did kind of the majority of the lead vocals there. And then most of the harmonies and like screams, doubles, like effects vocals we did here. I've got a little Manly reference mic that I set up here, and I've kind of treated the room enough so it's not boomy and boxy sounding. It's quite a, you know, a treated sound. So that was easy enough to kind of get that done. And then, yeah, the kind of editing, the other bits of production, like additional bits of production, a few bits of guitar was recorded here. And then, yeah, just kind of like all finalized here. We've had comments in the past where people have said like, oh, you're so much heavier live, or you're so much like more aggressive or whatever. And we were kind of, you know, wondering why it didn't transfer well enough on record. So that idea of having that we have live, we really wanted to capture in this record. And I think going analog just gives you that little bit more warmth. I think, you know, you can quite easily lose that kind of, I don't know what I think it's what warmth is the word, you know, everything can sound too clinical and too polished. And I think that starts to pull away from, you know, what a band should sound like. If you're overthinking everything and trying to fix every minute detail, it sounds like a robot's made it rather than a person. And I think we really wanted to kind of encapture those moments that you have live where you can't edit it, you know, the things that the happy mistakes and the bad mistakes as well, like, you know, they all kind of tell a story and build a sound. And I think we really wanted to get that into this record. I mean, the neural, you know, plugins and the quad cortex is like, it's paramount to our live sound. Like, we have such varying sounds and tones and effects that go out throughout the set that it just wouldn't be possible to carry, you know, 50 different amps with different heads, different pedals. It'd be a nightmare. So, you know, the quad cortex has been an absolute game changer. And in terms of actual, the quality and real ability of the sound is next to nothing. It's incredible. That being said, like, I think on record, you can hear the intricacies a little bit more. So we wanted to, you know, use these amps and, like you said, to get these kind of artifacts and just that next level of, you know, we actually modeled all of the amps and pedals and some of the outboard, and we used a UA aux box, which has like IR captures of different speakers and stuff like that, and we modeled a bunch of that so we could play these songs live. It's so close in sound, it's unbelievably close, but I think just on like live you wouldn't notice, but I think on record, if you've got the ability to have live versus a model of live, then obviously you'd probably choose that the first option. It's such minute details now. I think as well for us it was more the interface of stuff, like it was in our hands rather than like going through menus and stuff like that, so it just made it a little bit more of a fun experience, I guess, rather than like sitting behind a computer effectively. For now, just because of how we're flying in and flying out of places, this is like pretty much 99% of what's going on. For Tom, especially his bass, all of that's coming from the neural, Han as well. For me, I've got a power amp, and we normally run it into like a Marshall, I think 1960B 4x12, and that's purely just to give a bit of sound on stage, a bit of feel, and then we tend to mic that up as well, so you've kind of got that, it's not DI sounding, but the close mic, I guess, if you will, of the DI, and then the kind of warmth of the cab that you can kind of blend together to give that, I don't know, extra warmth. Yeah, so my setup's a pretty simple one. I'm not really doing much in terms of live recording in here. It's more kind of in the box, and I guess like manipulation of sounds, MIDI, whatever. So, we start with the kind of the brain of it all, my MacBook, which I'm running Ableton. I've been using Ableton for years now. I build a lot of our live tracks and show in Ableton. It's just a really powerful DAW for, I don't know, for live. It's kind of built for that way, DJs use it and stuff like that. So I've used it for years. I've not really delved into Logic or Pro Tools or anything like that. Like I've used Pro Tools for recording the album and stuff like that, but most of like my kind of creativity, if you will come through Ableton. I just find it an easy DAW to use just through using it for years and years. I've never championed myself as a mixing engineer. Like I'm not, that's not my forte or my strong points, but like in terms of like producing, I find that Ableton is just more of a more creative, a little bit of a friendlier system in terms of using like MIDI and stuff like that. I just find it like, it's really quick for me to use. And then we've got, the Apollo X6 here. I've got a whole bunch of UAD plugins and, stuff from like SSL EQs to APIs to, LA2A compressors, all sorts, which is, again, the UAD stuff is so powerful and so incredibly close to what the real thing is. I don't need to really have loads of outboard. I'd love it, but finance and space is kind of paramount. So that's kind of where I'm at here, and for that I'm really using it to record vocals or record guitar, maybe some outboard synth. So yeah, I've got a Manley reference mic, which I use up here. What else? I've got the Quad Cortex and the Kemper here. I've got them running through Korg Pitchback Black tuner, and then it kind of splits the signal out the back and goes into that, and then kind of splits out into the X6, so I can quickly switch between to kind of get the tones that I want. Yeah. What else? I've got the Furman kind of, powering everything. The Avalon I will use for tracking bass. So the U5, again, I just plug into there. It's got a through that goes through there, and I can go into my quad or into my Kemper. I just found it's a really nice, warm DI sound as well. So I've got this splitting out, just going into the X6 as a clean DI signal as well. I've got UAD satellite over there just so I can run more plugins if I'm, mixing drums or whatever and need, multiple plugins. So it just gives me that extra DSP. What else have I got? I've got the Kali Audio reference monitors. These are the V2s. I loved the V1s, but they had this kind of low level hiss, which if I was sat in here for like, I don't know, 10, 12 hours, it just made me feel like my head was sat in snow. So like, as soon as they brought out this version, I swapped them out, and I love them. I've got a Kali Audio sub as well underneath, just to give me a little bit more kind of bass detail in this room. What else? I've got a whole bunch of plugins from like Serum to Massive, whole bunch of like native instruments. For this album in LA, we had a whole bunch of, outboard synths. We had Jupiter, we had a Prophet, we had a Moog. What else did we have? We had a bunch of drum machines. So that, again, it was nice. I'm kind of used to, Ulterior, Analogue Lab stuff, A lot of these have been modeled on these classic synths. So I've had that for years, and I've, played around with it. So getting to use it in real life was cool, but I already kind of knew the interface as well. So it was a much quicker,
it's like a fish to water.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I understood how it all kind of works and stuff like that. So that was fun, kind of seeing something that I've been playing with digitally for years, being able to kind of use the real version was really cool. Output stuff, Arcade's really cool for like sampling. We didn't really use that too much on this album, but we find if when starting songs or writing or whatever, if an artist is struggling a little bit, you kind of like, I don't know, look through that and find a vibe or something that's kind of like sparks an interest. And more often than not, we'll take that out and replace it with something that we've kind of made. But it can just help speed up the writing process with, referencing other vibes and samples. In terms of like writing songs and starting, it really depends on the song itself. Like, there are times where Hannah and I will sit down, I've got an acoustic guitar, and, we'll kind of play some chords, and she'll, write some melodies over the top or whatever. But it's not the same every time. And I've just found that over the years, the more you use things that you don't understand or don't have like a knowledge of, the more interesting results that you get. Like, I've played guitar since I was like 4, but I can't play keys. I'm terrible. So, that's why I really value having a piano that I can just kind of like bring stuff up, put my fingers down and use my ears to kind of shape a song and just kind of like vibe it out in terms of like what sounds good. And, I might not be playing it in a classically, trained way, or, playing notes that aren't necessarily in the same scale or whatever, but I just find it a bit more freeing and a little less like, if I've got writer's block or whatever, I find myself even playing guitar, putting my fingers in the same kind of places. So using the Ableton Push, I can kind of do like drum loops, or like, again, you can use this as a keyboard as well. You can put your fingers in different places and it'll play like a keyboard, so you can use synth. And again, that's moving away from like having it in a format that you understand. It's more in a grid format, so you get happy accidents and stuff like that. Sometimes we'll pull up samples or like loops or whatever and be like, that's a cool vibe. Look at that, like building something similar to that. More often than not, most of the songs come to me whilst I'm in the shower, weirdly. So
best place to come up.
Yeah, and the bathroom's just there, so I'm more often than not bollock naked running down into it, being like, ooh. Exactly, yeah. But one of the biggest tools we use is the voice note on phone. Like, we could be anywhere and an idea comes in, and you've got the ability to just kind of record that quickly and then work on that in a later date. So
I think musicians have adapted to having
it's such a powerful notes and and voice note is an unbelievable tool.
Yeah. So I'm sat next to your guitars and I'm dying to hear you talk about them. I've been told off already for asking about them more. Let's have a look at your guitars.
Yeah. So I'll start with the bass. It's a P bass deluxe. It's the only bass you'll ever need.
Yeah.
It's just in terms of tonality and playability. It's it's faultless. You can get so much out of it in terms of like drive. You can get cleaner stuff. You can get slap. You can. I mean, it's literally on every single record of ours. We've swapped out the original pickups with the EMG X's. They're just a little hotter, and I've just found that they're a little bit better. I mean, for hot milk stuff, they're perfect. They just add a little bit more grit, and a little bit more drive going into stuff like this. So yeah, I swapped out the hardtail as well for a Gota hardtail as well. Just found that the intonation was a little bit better with that. But apart from that, it's pretty much stock. Then I've got, so these are my two latest guitars. Oh, they're kind of like dad and son, if you will. So this one is baritone. This one's just like your regular standard scale guitar. They are very, very similar. Like this is quite a bit heavier because of the Evertune. Yeah. I've just found that like recording, heavier stuff, I just really, really need it to be in tune. So the Evertunes are unbelievable.
You can put them through like anything.
Yeah.
They stay in.
Yeah, it's my first kind of like guitar with an Evertune, and it's such a powerful bit of equipment. I've got all these strings you can bend and stuff like that, but these are just stuck in tune. I've only got the one volume pot on both of these. I don't tend to use the tone. I just don't find it useful for what I need to do. I've got a 3-way pickup selector. These have got bare knuckle impulses in, just run a little hotter, and for the stuff that I'm predominantly using for this was kind of heavy single note stuff. They're just perfect for that. And then on this one, they are Gordon Smith wound, but they're based off the Gibson 500Ts.
Yeah.
And I've just found that we recorded pretty much like 90% of our rhythm stuff with 500Ts in Hannah's V. So I just really wanted to kind of carry that across into this guitar. They're both built the same. They've both got these little gems on the back. Yeah.
Custom little neck clip.
Yeah. Love them. So Gordon Smith has been kind of, we've been working with Gordon Smith since pretty much the start of Hot Milk. They've just built Tom a new bass as well. They've built me, I can't remember how many guitars now, too many.
You never have to.
I know, you can never have enough. I know, I keep telling my girlfriend that. Yeah, they're a brilliant company. We kind of champion working with UK, creatives, from like people who do our video to people who shoot, our photos. We love working, with people from where we're from. It's always nice to give back and help people up, and vice versa. We've been helped by so much. And one of these people, Gordon Smith, we actually cross paths through Creeper. So Ian's been using Gordon Smith longer than I have, and we had a guitar tech who did both our bands, Billy, and he looped us in, and they invited me down, and we looked around the factory, and I thought it was such a cool operation, and the level of detail and quality that these guitars have is second to none. Like they put so much work and effort into everything they do. They're really proud of qualities at the top of what they're achieving, and every time I send another stupid idea, they seem to be able to fabricate it. So it's been a great relationship. I'm lucky enough to be with them, and they've built me some amazing guitars over the years. So so that's these two. I've just got a little standard telly. So this I used on quite a lot on 90 Seconds to Midnight. Just the single coils, just kind of like that classic, single coil sound we really wanted. Super simple guitar. It's just got that timeless sound to it, and it's a good weapon to have in your arsenal. So that it's the lead guitar, that kind of like main riff, that's kind of sat on top, and then we've got like the V with 500 Ts underneath. I think on like the main hits, like the dun dun dun, I think we've got the baritone and like a humbucker kind of sound, just to kind of like fill that up. But that's kind of like the main sprinkle on top. This was, I think, the first guitar they ever built me.
It's very bright.
Yeah, it's kind of got this weird colour to it where, wherever you kind of put the light on it, it turns from purple to blue to green, like a bit like an oil slick kind of vibe. Really cool. I love it. It's taken an absolute beating over the last tour. I've just seen like all the little blemishes now coming through, now the light's shining on it. These have got push-pull, again, on both of these. Being the first guitar I had from Gordon Smith, I had a tone pop, but over time I realised that just no use for it. So, this one has it on. Do I use it? No. Lace Sensor gave me these custom humbuckers, dropping gains, and they sound great. They sound really, really thick. If I'm using predominantly tones with like an octaver or a pog or a whammy on it, like this guitar's perfect for that. Just such a thick sound. That's that. And then finally, I've got an American. Let me look at the state of that. This has been, I think, from the start of Hot Milk. This is the first guitar I had from when we started Hot Milk. Strat Deluxe. Again, it's just super versatile. You've got was it a push-pull? I don't really understand it. It's
I think it counts as a push-pull.
I think so, yeah. So kind of, I think they double up as a humbucker.
It's a pot switch, isn't it? So.
I think so, yeah. Super versatile again, and it's just got that classic Strat sound, which is just super helpful to have, when you need it. Yeah. So yeah, it's really, really nice. I use this a lot for clean tones, flick that up to the neck. Cool. And then downstairs I've got a Gatsby Gordon Smith with P90s in. Again, I've just, always loved like offset guitars and Jazz Masters and Jaguars and stuff like that. So yeah, with Corporation P.O.P, we've been lucky enough to travel around the world. We've played incredible places, Japan, Australia, America, Europe. And I feel like when you're a kid, you're so set on trying to get out of your hometown, as cheesy as it sounds. But I think as you get a bit older, you kind of look back to, where you've grown up. And, I moved to Manchester when I was 17, and I've lived here ever since. And it's got such a rich culture and big music scene. Some amazing artists have come out of this city. And I think with this record, we just very much felt like it needed to sound like home. Like we're not trying to chase any other trend. We're not trying to be anyone else. We're just trying to look at like who Hot Milk is and who we are. And I feel like we're most grounded when we're back home. So we really wanted the sound to be British inspired and, take elements of, tour, what we've learned on tour and what we've learned from different parts of the world. But, focus at home and look at the politics that's going on here, look at the kind of the sounds, the streets, if you will, and just trying to roll this into Hot Milk's next record. Like, I'm super proud to be from here, and it's given us everything that we have right now. Like, we the band wouldn't have started if it wasn't for Manchester. So I think it's always going to be something we hold close to our hearts. So, with this, we were looking at Oasis, bands that have come out of Manchester, Oasis, the Buzzcocks. Not even down to bands, like you look at Warehouse Project, stuff like that. The venues that we've, you know, grown up going to, I've worked in, bands, you know, that are coming out of Manchester now. Well, not quite Manchester, but like the northwest, you know, like Boston Manor, like our peers, Low from Liverpool. I think the UK has got such a rich scene, and I think it's got so much to offer. Sometimes when you go over to America, people forget like our small little island, but I feel like, you know, UK music really is kind of paving its own way, and every band has its own like unique sound. We wanted to be part of that. We wanted to kind of like, you know, fly the flag wherever we go of like UK and Manchester. So, you know, we're in a real scary time where I mean, look outside and I see cranes, and I see like, you know, buildings like Sound Control disappearing, and, you know, we used to practice at Brunswick Mill, and that's being turned into flats now, and you know, so many people are moving to this city because it's rich culture and, you know, its heritage, and we're destroying it by essentially paving over all these incredible venues. Like you look at Lead Mill in Sheffield, it's scary times, and those venues like allowed us to grow, allowed me personally to grow. You know, I played in Sound Control in a band previously, and if you're destroying all these kind of grassroots venues, the smaller venues, like how do you ever expect another band to break through the scene? Because there's no way that bands can just walk straight into the Ritz or whatever like that. They need these grassroots venues to help grow the scene and have a scene. Like it's real scary. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so for example, 90 Seconds to Midnight, we shot that locally. That was in Eccles. We used to live in Eccles, and it had that kind of, the bits they were knocking down had that bleak kind of Manchester greyness that we were looking for, you know, the 80s kind of inspired architecture. My best mate shot the video. He lives there. He shot a bunch of our videos, Kennedy. You know, it's always nice to work with people from home. England was shot in Bolton. The American Machine, that was shot. I think this entire campaign's been shot in Manchester or around Manchester. So it's been nice, one, not travelling for for selfish reasons, but it's nice to kind of keep it in the family and give mates work. You know, Kennedy's worked with us for years. Tom Pullen, he's worked for us for years, but he's a great photographer, and he's shot a bunch of stuff for us up here. Jamie Waters, he's another one who we've worked with, and it's great that we can kind of showcase Manchester as that creative city that it is. I don't know, we have a fair few chaotic moments live, especially with stuff breaking. It's normally me that has to run off stage and fix it. I don't know, if I think back to like last year, and we supported the Foo Fighters in Australia, and we played, you know, the Sydney, I think it was Olympic Stadium, and I think it was like 42 degrees in heat, and I was wearing a suit, and it was hot. And we finished. It was one of my favourite gigs I've ever played, and we finished it and immediately came off stage, and we're shown backstage to one of the plunge pools like that they had in the changing rooms. And I remember jumping in, like stripping off my suit, jumping in, and feeling like all the lactic acid like leave my legs and arms. It was a weird feeling, but just very bizarre. Thinking like, I'm from York originally, and you know, went to school there, and thinking like I used to busk at the races, and moving from that to like playing a stadium in Sydney is I think that is chaotic in itself. It's wild. Like, I never thought I'd be able to do that. I think again, like with the Foos, like Dave Grohl, he, in terms of fronting, guitar playing, he taught us a lot in terms, you know, we've been lucky enough to support them a whole bunch of times, and the way you can hold a crowd and make everything feel personal, and you know, the Foos as a whole, just the way they sculpt their set, and it is, you know, ebbs and flows, it's taught us a lot in terms of like showmanship, and you kind of like how to present yourself on stage and also backstage. Like their crew and team are amazing. They're, you know, one of the biggest bands in the world, and they're still very level-headed and grounded and respectful. And I think that's a really positive thing to have at that level. Like, there's not egos kicking about and whatever. So that was cool. Who else? I grew up listening to a lot of, I play in open tunings, so I play in dadgad mostly, and that was because I grew up listening to like Damien Rice, a lot of acoustic, like Andy McKee. I think, I got very bored of playing in standard, and going back to what I said previously about getting a bit stagnated in certain tunings and instruments that kind of you force your hand to play the same things over and over again. Listening to these artists and copying their tunings and different methods of playing kind of opened me up to a whole different avenue and different sounds, these open kind of beautiful sounds that really kind of helped me sculpt my guitar playing. So I'd say like they're a big influence. In terms of producing, like, I'd never, before the band, really produced. I'd done my own stuff. I wouldn't call it producing per se. I'd call it more songwriting using software. And, over the years, I've been lucky enough to work with some of the biggest people, in the game at the moment. One of the first was Zach Zaffini. He taught me a lot about production, songwriting, the pace. The pace that he works at is unbelievable, and I think that works with both me and Hannah because we're constantly ideas coming in and chaotic, and he kind of keeps that going. And I learned a lot from sitting in sessions with him and doing records, doing songs with him, and back and forth. So like really aspire to be as good as him. And then like Rick Rubin, dude's, I mean, I don't have to say too much, like dude has produced some of the craziest records ever, and I think I admire his I'd say I'm a little bit more, I'm not likening myself to Rick Rubin at all, let me get that straight, but I admire his method of like not being overly, I don't want to downplay him, like, but technically minded. A lot of it's done through feel or vibe, and I feel like that's such an important thing to have as a producer, not just the technical skills and gear that you have at your kind of beck and call, but to just be able to feel things out and just like the kind of innate feeling, I guess it's all off feeling. Yeah. I think that's such an important thing to have when writing songs, to just like sometimes just trust your gut on what's right. And you might be micing it up wrong, you might be playing things wrong, you might be wrong, like what's wrong? If it works, then nothing in art is wrong. And I feel like that's something that you've got to be quite open to again not try and overproduce and polish things that don't need to be polished. Keep that like character and integrity on that first take. If it's the one, you might play a bum note, or it might not be the best technically executed, but if it feels right, it feels right. The next couple of months are going to be super busy. We're going to be going into Europe. We're doing a bunch of festivals there. We're playing shows with Green Day. We're going to go to Japan. I think we're announcing a Korean show. We're going back to America. We're doing some festivals out there. And then obviously we've got our biggest ever UK headline at the end of the year, which we're really excited for. We're going to try and do lots of things that we haven't done before, and playing a whole load of stuff off of Corporation P.O.P. I've already designed like the lighting and the show itself, so like I'm really excited for people to see that. And then Corporation P.O.P comes out 27th of June, which isn't long now, and you can listen to it wherever the you listen to your music.